episode of MothMan podcast. Tonight we're doing a recap of our investigation on Old Salisbury Road in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and we're very excited about our investigation. Bruce, you want to tell them a little bit about what we were doing and why we're going to be doing this again?
All right. What we were doing is we were conducting a paranormal investigation for a lady that lived out in Salisbury Road. And initially, she had called in to the podcast. Daryl had interviewed her over the phone. And after going to investigate for like a short period of time, we actually collected quite a bit of evidence to where we're already planning a return trip, especially since we're getting an SLS camera. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a modified Xbox Kinect camera that can detect motion and map in the skeletal features of a figure, and it's been used to on Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters to map in spirits. And so we're kind of pretty excited to test out our new camera once it comes in a couple weeks and on our return trip.
We were very excited. When we arrived out at the residence, we were able to interview Sherry and her daughter, and Malia, is that her name? Malia, excuse me, didn't mean to mispronounce her name there, Malia. We did a really good interview that I think that you will really enjoy when you watch the video. Then we started our investigations. I started off doing an investigation in one of the middle bedrooms where a little girl had been seen there in that room in the past, and it was very interesting. And my findings there, I had a meter with me, which went off a couple of times while I was in the room. But the real investigation was the fact that when I was standing there, I started talking to the little girl, and as I started talking to the little girl, the temperature in the room, I had some thermal...
digital thermometer.
Yeah, digital microwave type. Infrared is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, infrared
thermometer. Infrared thermometer, and I was looking around the room and noticed that the room was 68 degrees, and it held 68 degrees until I started talking to the little girl. And when I started talking to the little girl, I noticed that the temperature started dropping right beside my knee, my left knee. And it dropped all the way down at one point to 57 degrees. And I kept saying it was okay, that you could touch my hand, everything would be okay. And the temperature in the room, I could go just to the left of my knee, and it would go back up to 68 degrees. Right off the point of my knee where I felt that she was standing, it would drop down to 57 degrees, and just to the right of my knee, past her, it would go back up to 68. So there was a little narrow spot there that I felt that the entity or spirit was standing, and while I was talking to her, the temperature would stay down. It would flux between 60 to 57 degrees. I felt that she was moving in closer and moving away from me, and then at one point she left the room and the temperature went back up to 68 degrees. Later on, while I was in that room, Bruce came in, and Bruce actually started messing with the toys there in the chair where I was sitting, and the meter went crazy again, blinking off and on. Apparently it didn't like us messing with the toys.
Yeah,
so
the EMF detector actually scared me a little bit when it went off, because we weren't expecting it to. And an interesting thing about him, Daryl talking about telling the little girl to hold his hand, is actually on the full spectrum camera. At one point, you see an orb fly right toward his hand, and you can it's just a split second, but you can see the orb as it approaches his hand while it's on his knee.
And then Bruce had some very interesting findings in the front bedroom.
If you want to call it that. All right, in the front bedroom, I was in there with a full spectrum camera, and I was recording, and I was hearing footsteps, and it was like a pit pat, like kind of like inching toward me. And so I asked at one point if they could move the chair. And I was standing right next to the chair, and I had the camera focused on it. Now the chair didn't like necessarily move, but it creaked, like almost if someone had sat in it, and it kind of caught me off guard at one point. But I also captured some EVPs on the camera as well. At one point I asked it, could you speak into the camera so I could hear you, and it told me to shut the F up. So,
and you can hear that on the video.
Crystal clear, yeah. And then there was an incident with that same camera, like later on at the night, like right before the battery died, which was weird because the camera kind of was consistently draining of power, and it had been fully charged when we first started, but it's weird. I was holding the camera, and there was no movement whatsoever from the camera. There was no background noise except for Sherry, the owner of the house, was talking to me in the living room, and I was kind of holding the camera like out like this, straight ahead of me, into the room, and there's this weird EVP that's so loud that it drowns out Sherry and I, or Sherry talking to me in the background, where it says, "Hi, Daryl, Jimmy." And that's one thing that really caught our attention, because I mean, number one, of how loud this EVP was, and if that was truly what we heard, that's a Class A intelligent response, and it's
now Bruce has been asking the spirit all along to please identify yourself. Could you please give your name? And he and I both were in that area when this took place, and neither one of us actually heard this, but it's as plain as day on the video camera once we start playing it back.
I mean, it's as loud as you and I are talking to each other almost on the camera, but it was not audible whatsoever. So that piece of evidence right there is what got me and Daryl really wanting to go into the public records before we go into the next investigation, to investigate to see who lived on the property before the house was built, and see if we can identify Jimmy and this little girl that's in the purple dress and purple bow.
We're very excited about going back again. It's one of those things where I never felt a threat in the house, and the residents of the residents never said that they felt threatened either. But you could definitely feel that there was something there. We saw, and we have on video, a couple of orbs that we saw moving around.
There was actually a couple off-camera incidences with those orbs as well.
Right.
Like I saw them through my phone once the full spectrum camera had died, and I was trying to snap a photo, but they were moving so fast that I couldn't capture it. And Daryl suggested to switch it to video mode, and that's when we caught one heading right into the camera. And also, at one point, Sherry and I were sitting on the couch, and you were sitting on the opposite couch, and Sherry and I both looked up at the same time, because we saw, or at least we caught a glimpse of what we thought looked like the tail end of a dress as it passed the doorway down across the hall. And it was so quick, but of course we weren't recording at the time, and we couldn't really validate it.
I was there in the room when they did that, or saw that, and I was actually looking at the two of them, and I could see on both of their faces that they looked over my shoulder and was looking in the hallway real quick at the same time. So apparently they both saw something at the same time, and caught their attention in the hallway. When I turned around and looked in the hallway, of course I didn't see anything. But the drop in the temperature really you could tell and feel that there was a presence there in that drop in the temperature, and the equipment was working fine. Nobody can say that we didn't check out the equipment. The equipment was working fine. It read 68 degrees in that room the whole time, except when the entity came up to my leg. And I even had Bruce come over with the camera and showed that the thermometer was dropping down. I believe while he was standing there, it dropped down to 63. So it was really good that he could catch that as it was dropping down. Now, Bruce also came into the room a couple of times, and when Bruce came into the room, I could tell that the entity would move away from me, and I would try to tell it to come back because we were not going to hurt it, or we just wanted to be there and to talk to it and be with it. And then when Bruce would leave again, I could see the temperature dropping back down.
Oh, tell them what happened when I put the EVP recorder on the hobby horse.
We put a recorder there to try to capture if the entity would like to speak to us, and as soon as he put it down, something turned the recorder right off, just right away.
Yeah, like as soon as I leave the room, all you hear is a static, and then the recording just stops, and I had to go turn it back on, and then we didn't capture anything after that, but on the recorder. But it was interesting. Like he said, every time I walked in there, it seemed like it ducked away from me and hid, and then it would go back to him as soon as I left the room.
As soon as he left the room, and like I said, now the entity has shown itself in the past to break things. It knocks things off of counters and breaks them. You can actually see, we have eyewitnesses showing or telling us about glass would actually move across the table and fall and break, especially when Sherry left the residence. Apparently it acts up when Sherry leaves the residence, and in one instance the daughter and the aunt was in the room, and they looked up and they could see the screws unscrewing from the light above their head, and sure enough, the fixture from the light above their head just fell and busted in the floor. So the entity has the ability to switch off that recorder if it wanted to. So something switched off our recorder just as quick as we would turn it on.
And what was funny is, like, during the interview, like, we caught an EVP during the interview when Sherry was describing that, and it was the little girl's voice saying "bad."
Yeah,
like,
if you look listen real closely, you can hear something over the camera mic say "bad," and so we were thinking it was talking about it breaking things. Maybe it felt like it was bad. But the entity has called out for mother quite a few times in the past, and they've heard it. Also, did you mention right after you asked if it could move the rocking chair and you hear it creak?
Yeah, I mentioned that.
And you mentioned that there was footsteps, loud wooden footsteps right after
real
that.
loud. Like it started soft, and then it got loud. Like especially when the ones near the chair, like they were right in front of me. But,
and we did capture that on the audio and in the video. Also, the daughter who now sleeps downstairs says she hears nightly somebody running and walking down the hallway. So we were able to hear those footsteps. We're excited about going back. We think we just opened the door. We were there only probably an hour and a half doing this investigation, and next time we're trying to go back and maybe spend the night and do a thorough investigation and see what we can...
with Sherry out of the residence.
With Sherry out of the residence.
That'll be an interesting catalyst for things, hopefully.
We hope we'll see some of the mischief that takes place there when Sherry's gone, and that it makes the entity mad. We will be back with another podcast and investigative podcast in the near future. So stay tuned, and we hope that you'll enjoy the video that you're going to be looking at tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.